That yellowing tomato plant you're about to rip out of the ground isn't dead, it's starving. And the exact thing it needs to come back to life is already sitting somewhere on your property right now. Not at the garden center, not in a $30 bag of synthetic fertilizer. It's in your kitchen trash. It's growing wild along your fence line. It's piling up under your rabbit cages. And one of them, I'll warn you up front, comes straight out of your bathroom. Here's what nobody at the feed store wants you to know. The fertilizer industry in this country pulls in over $24 billion a year. Not 1 cent of that goes toward the 21 methods I'm about to show you. You can't patent an eggshell, you can't bottle a chicken coop, and you definitely can't put a 2,000-year-old Japanese farming secret on a shelf at Tractor Supply. By the end of this video, you'll have 21 proven free fertilizers hiding in plain sight on your homestead. Most cost nothing. Several are backed by peer-reviewed research going back decades, and every single one of them was used by farmers for centuries before the chemical fertilizer factory was even invented. Stick around. Your trash, your weeds, your animals, and yes, even your bathroom are about to become your garden's best friends. Here's the reality most homesteaders are living with right now, and nobody's talking about it honestly. The average backyard gardener in this country spends between $300 and $600 a year on fertilizers, soil amendments, and plant treatments. If you're running a small market garden or trying to feed a family of 4 year-round, that number jumps past $1,000 fast. And that's before you add the gas to drive to the garden center, the time standing in the aisle trying to figure out which blue bottle or green bag is the right one, and the frustration when it doesn't even work. You follow the directions on the label, you mix the granules, you water them in. 2 weeks later, the plant looks exactly the same or worse. And here's the part that'll really get under your skin. Most commercial fertilizers feed the plant, but they starve the soil. Every time you pour synthetic nitrogen on your garden bed, you're bypassing the biological system that's supposed to be doing that job naturally. The soil microbes slow down, the fungal networks shrink, the earthworms leave. After a few seasons, you've got dirt that can't grow anything without another hit of the blue stuff. It's like putting a garden on life support and calling it healthy. Meanwhile, the actual solutions, the ones that feed the plant and build the soil at the same time, are sitting in your kitchen, barn, your compost pile, your fence line, and your wood stove. They've been sitting there the whole time. Farmers used them for thousands of years before Fritz Haber and Carl Bosch fired up the first synthetic ammonia plant in 1913. But you won't find them in any garden store, because you can't patent a weed. You can't put a quarterly earnings report on a Comfrey patch, and there's no profit margin on a bucket of rabbit manure. The $24 billion fertilizer industry didn't grow because chemical fertilizer works better. It grew because chemical fertilizer can be packaged, patented, and shipped on a pallet. The methods I'm about to show you can't be shipped on a pallet, but they work. And most of them are free. Now, before I walk you through all 21 of these, I need to show you something that changes the way you think about feeding plants entirely. Because once you understand this one piece of science, every method on this list makes perfect sense. In the early 1950s, 2 researchers at Michigan State University did something nobody had ever attempted. A soil scientist named H.B. Tukey and a horticulturalist named Sylvan Whitwer mixed radioactive phosphorus and potassium into a liquid spray. They applied it directly to plant leaves. Then they tracked where it went using Geiger counters. What they found rewrote the rule book on fertilizing. Nutrients sprayed on a leaf travel through the entire plant at roughly 1 foot per hour. Up to 65% of foliar nitrogen is absorbed within 25 minutes, not days, not weeks, minutes. That means a struggling tomato plant doesn't have to sit around for 2 weeks waiting for soil bacteria to break down some granular fertilizer you sprinkled on the dirt. Spray the right solution on its leaves at sundown, and it can be visibly greener by morning. That discovery is the engine behind almost every fast-acting method on this list. We're not just feeding the soil and hoping the plant eventually gets the message. We're feeding the plant directly through its leaves while we build the soil up for the long haul. But here's the thing. This isn't new science applied to new ideas. This is new science that finally explains what old farmers already knew worked. The Japanese have been using wood vinegar on crops for over 2,000 years. Korean farmers developed an entire natural farming system in the 1960s, built around fermented plant juices and lactic acid bacteria captured from rice water. The British have been brewing Comfrey tea since the 1950s. The French farmers have fermented stinging nettle into liquid fertilizer for centuries. They call it Perrin d'Ortie. The Romans collected and taxed human urine because they understood its value as a soil amendment. Amish and Mennonite farmers have used chamber lye on their fields for generations. And in the Amazon rainforest, pre-Columbian peoples spent 1,000 years deliberately building patches of black, fertile soil called terra preta, soil so rich that 500 years after they European contact, those patches still grow crops at 3 times the productivity of the surrounding jungle. None of this was superstition. None of it was guesswork. These were systems developed over centuries by people who couldn't afford to get it wrong, because getting it wrong meant their families didn't eat. Modern agriculture didn't improve on these methods. It replaced them with things that could be manufactured, marketed, and sold at scale. And in the process, an entire generation of gardeners lost access to knowledge that worked for 2,000 years. Today, we're taking it back. Every method on this list is either backed by peer-reviewed research, validated by university extension programs, or proven by the kind of multi-generational farming wisdom that predates every chemical company on Earth. And I'll be honest with you, 3 of these methods I'd bet money your grandfather used and your father forgot. Let's get into them. Now, I'm about to walk you through all 21 fertilizers one by one with the exact recipes, dilution ratios, and the specific plants each one works best on. If you're serious about cutting your fertilizer bill to 0 and growing healthier food than anything on a store shelf, hit subscribe and tap that bell right now. You don't want to miss what's coming, especially number 17. That one turned me into a believer. Number 1. Wood vinegar, the 2,000-year-old Japanese secret with 65 studies behind it. This one comes straight from Japan. They call it mokusaku. The Chinese have used it for over 2,000 years. Korean farmers swear by it. And in 1986, the Japanese government officially registered it as a soil improvement material. No one in America has heard of it. Here's what it is. When you burn wood slowly in a low-oxygen environment, the same process that makes charcoal, a brown smoke rises off the pile. If you cool that smoke down and condense it, you get a dark, smoky liquid. That liquid is wood vinegar, also called pyroligneous acid. It's not just one chemical, it's over 200 of them. Acetic acid, methanol, phenols, trace minerals, a whole pharmacy of plant-active compounds captured straight out of the smoke. Now here's where it gets serious. In 2025, 2 researchers named Liefeld and Waltz published a meta-review in the journal Agronomy. They compiled 65 peer-reviewed studies covering 33 different crops, all using wood vinegar. The average yield increase across those studies? 21%. Plant biomass went up 25%, and it suppressed fungal disease at the same time. 21% from smoke water. You can't easily make this at home unless you've got a charcoal kiln, but the good stuff, made from bamboo or hardwood and aged 3 to 6 months, costs less than a small bag of synthetic fertilizer for a quart bottle. The recipe? 1 part wood vinegar to 200 parts water. That's about a teaspoon per gallon. Spray it on leaves or pour it at the root zone. For seed soaking, same dilution, soak for 24 hours before planting. The critical mistake: going too strong. Anything above 1% concentration, that's 1 part in 100, and the same product that boosted yields 21% starts killing weeds. Above 3%, it's a flat-out herbicide. Less is more. If you've got tomatoes fighting early blight, peppers with leaf spot, or melons battling fungus, this is the first liquid I'd reach for, and almost nobody at the garden store will even know what it is. But the next one, even harder to believe, because it comes straight out of your medicine cabinet. Number 2, Aspirin Spray. The $0.03 immune booster that primes your plants to fight disease. This sounds like folklore. It's actually some of the best understood biology in modern plant science. In 1990, a team of scientists led by Daniel Klassig at the Waxman Institute published a landmark paper in the journal Science. They discovered that when a plant gets infected by a virus, fungus, or bacteria, the plant's very first response is to produce a compound called salicylic acid. That acid then travels through the entire plant, switching on a defense system called systemic acquired resistance, basically the plant's broad-spectrum immune system. Now here's where your bathroom cabinet enters the picture. The active ingredient in aspirin is acetyl salicylic acid. Dissolve an aspirin tablet in water, and it breaks down into salicylic acid plus a tiny bit of acetic acid. Spray that on a tomato leaf, and you've just told the entire plant, trouble's coming. Get ready. The plant responds when scientists call PR proteins, chitinases, glucanases, compounds that puncture fungal cell walls before the fungus even shows up. The whole defense system gets primed and loaded, like a farmer locking up the chicken coop before the coyotes arrive. The underlying immune priming science is rock solid. Hundreds of peer-reviewed papers back it up. The recipe? 1 regular 325 milligram aspirin tablet, uncoated, dissolved in 1 gallon of water. Add a single drop of dish soap so it sticks to the leaves. Spray every 2 to 3 weeks during the growing season. Best on tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, eggplants, the whole nightshade family, and brassicas like broccoli and cabbage. 2 mistakes I see constantly. First, people use coated aspirin. It doesn't dissolve properly. Buy the cheapest, uncoated aspirin you can find. Second, they double or triple the dose thinking more is better. Above 500 milligrams per gallon, the leaves start to burn. 1 tablet, that's it. And here's the timing detail nobody tells you. This is a preventative treatment. You spray before the plant gets sick, not after. Once a fungus has its hooks in, the immune system can't undo the damage. But applied early, once a month from transplant on, the plant fights its own battles before you ever see the first spot on a leaf. 3 cents worth of aspirin doing the work of a $40 fungicide. And the next one on this list has even more research behind it than both of the first 2 combined. Number 3, liquid seaweed extract, what plant scientists call the most studied biostimulant on Earth. If you only ever buy 1 plant tonic in a bottle, this should be it. Liquid seaweed extract, usually made from a brown algae called Ascophyllum nodosum, harvested off the rocky coasts of Maine, Nova Scotia, and Iceland, has more peer-reviewed research behind it than any other natural plant input on the market. Universities in Canada, South Africa, and the United States have spent the last 40 years pulling it apart in the lab. Here's what they found. Seaweed is loaded with natural plant hormones, cytokines, the chemicals that tell a plant to grow new shoots, auxins, which signal root growth, gibberellins, which control stretching and flowering, plus betaines and amino acids that help a plant survive heat, cold, drought, and transplant shock. This isn't fertilizer in the NPK sense. It's a biological signal. You spray seaweed on a half-dead transplant, and you're basically telling the plant, calm down, push out new roots, get back to work. A 2013 study at Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia showed that within 24 to 96 hours of a seaweed application, the plant's own hormone-producing genes started firing harder. A South African researcher named Van Staden showed that cabbage transplants dipped in seaweed had 33% more leaf weight 4 weeks later. Citrus growers in Florida use it to push trees through drought. Vineyard managers spray it after frost. If you live near the ocean, you can make it yourself. Collect storm-cast seaweed off the beach. Rinse it twice in fresh water to wash off the salt. Chop it. Fill a bucket halfway. Cover with water. Let it ferment 2 to 3 weeks. Strain. Apply at 1 to 2 ounces per gallon of water as a foliar spray. Once a week through the growing season. Early morning or evening, never midday. The mistake almost everyone makes: going too strong. A study at the University of Natal in 1985 found that seaweed extract at 1 part in 100 actually slowed root growth on tomatoes. At 1 part in 600, the same product boosted root growth by 60%. The plant hormones in seaweed are active at tiny concentrations, same way a thimble of yeast can rise a whole loaf of bread. Frost-bitten transplants, drought-stressed peppers, a sad little tomato seedling that just got moved into the ground. Seaweed extract is the thing that wakes them up. Now, the next 3 aren't about feeding a hungry plant, they're about rescuing one that's in trouble, and the cures come from your fridge and your dairy animals. Number 4, hydrogen peroxide, the $1 root rot emergency rescue. Sometimes a plant isn't hungry, it's drowning, and the difference matters. You overwater a tomato in a clay pot, or a low spot in the garden holds water for 3 days after a heavy rain. The roots sit in stagnant water with no oxygen. Within days, fungi like Pythium and Phytoplaphtora, which live in your soil all the time just waiting, multiply. They eat the roots from the inside out. The leaves wilt even when the soil is soaking wet. By the time most gardeners notice, half the root system is mush. This is one of the few times reaching for a chemical is the smart move, and it's a chemical you probably already own. Drugstore hydrogen peroxide, the brown bottle, the 3% kind, about $1 at any pharmacy. The chemistry: hydrogen peroxide is just water with 1 extra oxygen atom, H2O2 instead of H2O. When it hits soil, it breaks down into plain water and pure oxygen. That oxygen does 2 things at once. It oxidizes the rot fungi to death, and it reoxygenates the suffocated soil so healthy roots can breathe again. The recipe: 1 tablespoon of 3% peroxide per cup of water as a soil drench. Pour it through the root zone until it runs out the bottom of the pot. For raised beds, same ratio in a watering can. Repeat every 3 to 4 days for 2 to 3 weeks until you see fresh white root tips. Speed of result: if you catch it early, new white roots in 5 to 7 days. If the entire root ball is already black mush, the plant's gone. No miracle on earth bringing that back. 3 mistakes that ruin this. First, people buy 35% food-grade peroxide and use it straight. That'll burn the roots off the plant in 20 minutes. Use the 3% drugstore stuff. Second, right after using peroxide, people add compost tea or a microbial product thinking they're rebuilding the soil. Don't. Peroxide kills good microbes the same way it kills the bad ones. Wait at least a week before adding any biology back in. Third, and this is a safety rule, don't mix peroxide with bleach, ever. That makes a gas that'll send you to the hospital. For a plant that's drowning, this is the rescue. But for the plant that's covered in that white powdery coating, the next one costs even less and comes from your fridge. Number 5. Milk spray, the 2-cent fungicide that matched a $40 chemical in lab trials. In 1999, a Brazilian agricultural scientist named Wagner Bettiol got tired of watching organic farmers lose their squash crops to powdery mildew. He had a hunch. He ran the experiment. He sprayed zucchini plants with diluted cow's milk, 10% milk, 90% water, twice a week. He compared them to plants treated with synthetic fungicide and plants treated with plain water. The water control plants, disease severity hit 56%. Synthetic fungicide brought it down to 9%. The milk spray, 10%, statistically the same as the chemical. A 2-cent solution doing the same job as a $40 bottle. Bettiol published his results in the journal Crop Protection. Australian researchers replicated the work on grapes. New Zealand wine country adopted it commercially. The Brazilian government started officially recommending it. Here's what's actually happening. When milk dries on a leaf in sunlight, the proteins and riboflavin react with ultraviolet light to produce small amounts of oxygen radicals. Those radicals collapse the cell walls of fungal spores within hours. There's also a protein in milk called lactoferrin that ruptures fungal membranes directly, and the lactic acid bacteria sitting on the leaf compete with the fungus for nutrients. This isn't folk wisdom. It's a triple-action fungicide that costs you a splash of milk. The recipe: 1 part milk to 9 parts water. Skim, 2%, whole, doesn't matter. The fat isn't the active part, the protein is. Spray to dripping on the upper leaf surfaces. The timing detail that makes or breaks it. You have to apply this on a sunny morning between sunup and noon. The UV light is what activates the chemistry. Spray it at dusk or under cloud cover and almost nothing happens. Reapply every 7 days during active infection. Reapply after rain. Best on cucumbers, squash, zucchini, melons, pumpkins, the whole cucurbit family, plus grapes, roses, and tomatoes. The mistake: first, people reach for almond milk or oat milk because that's in their fridge now. Those don't work. There's no lactoferrin in plant milks. Use real dairy. Second, they go 50% milk thinking stronger is better. The leaf gets sticky. Fat solids attract mold and the sprayer clogs. Stick with 1 to 9. And if you raise dairy animals, goats, cows, sheep, the byproduct from your cheese making is about to become your next weapon. Number 6. Whey, the cheesemaker's byproduct that kills powdery mildew for free. If you've ever made yogurt, mozzarella, ricotta, or any cheese at home, you've poured gallons of liquid down the drain. That liquid is whey, and whey is almost identical in function to the milk spray we just talked about. Plus, it's packed with billions of live lactobacillus bacteria. When you add a starter culture to milk, the lactobacillus eats the milk sugars and produces lactic acid. The acid curdles the curds. You strain off the solid curds for cheese. What's left? Whey, water, residual milk sugar, minerals, and live lactobacillus. Wagner Bettiol's lab in Brazil confirmed in 2008 that whey at 1 part to 9 parts water reduced cucumber powdery mildew by 70 to 94%. Same mechanism as the milk spray, same results. 2 ways to use it. First, as a fungicide. 1 part whey to 9 parts water sprayed on a sunny morning. Second, as a microbial inoculant, 1 teaspoon per gallon of water poured at the root zone. The lactobacillus suppress fungal pathogens, free up phosphate, and balance the soil microbiome. Important distinction: Whey from yogurt or unpasteurized cheese is full of live bacteria. That's the good stuff. Whey from heavily pasteurized commercial cheese is dead. The minerals are still there, but the biological action is gone. The mistake. People store whey in a sealed plastic bottle on the counter for 2 weeks. The lactobacillus keep fermenting at room temperature. The cap blows off. Refrigerate fresh whey within a few hours or use it within 48 hours. If you make a half gallon of yogurt every 2 weeks, you produce a quart of whey. That's enough to spray powdery mildew on a quarter-acre cucumber patch all summer for free from a byproduct you were throwing away. Now, the next 3 come from the wildest corner of your property, your fence line, your flower bed, and a plant most Americans treat like a weed. Number 7. Comfrey tea, the British gardener's secret weapon with a 5-foot taproot. There's a plant most American gardeners walk right past. Fuzzy leaves the size of a dinner plate, purple bell-shaped flowers, a taproot that drives down 5 to 6 feet into the subsoil. It's called Comfrey, and in the 1950s, an Englishman named Lawrence D. Hills figured out it might be the single best plant fertilizer ever grown. Hills ran a research farm in a place called Bocking in Essex, England. He spent 20 years experimenting with a Russian variety of comfrey. Out of all the strains he tested, one stood out, strain number 14. It was sterile, so it wouldn't take over your garden. It was rust-resistant, and it had 2 to 3 times the potassium of farmyard manure. Today, every serious British gardener still calls it Bocking 14. Why does it work? That deep taproot. Comfrey sends roots straight down through subsoil where most garden plants can't reach. It mines minerals from down there, potassium, calcium, silicon, magnesium, and pulls them up into its leaves. Cut the leaves 4 or 5 times a season, and you've got the richest plant material in your whole garden. The recipe, Lawrence Phil's own method. Pack chopped comfrey leaves tightly into a bucket. Place a brick on top. Drill a hole in the bottom of the bucket. Set the bucket up on bricks over a collection jar. No water added. Over 2 to 3 weeks, the leaves break down under their own weight. A dark, almost odorless concentrate drips out the bottom, maybe a quart of liquid per 5-gallon bucket of leaves. That's your gold. Dilute 15 to 1 with water. Pour at the root zone of any flowering or fruiting plant. The mistakes: don't put this on lettuce, spinach, or root crops. The high potassium causes them to bolt. Only use Bocking 14, not wild common comfrey, which spreads aggressively and you'll never get rid of. And don't drink it. The plant contains compounds that damage the human liver. Plant Bocking 14 root crowns once. A few dollars each from heirloom seed companies. They'll feed your garden for 30 years. Number 8. Stinging nettle tea. The French farmer's free nitrogen source growing along every fence line. There's a weed growing along almost every fence line in the country. It bites you when you brush past it. Most people consider it a pest. The French call it ortie. They ferment it in a bucket and call the result purine d'ortie, nettle slurry. They've used it as fertilizer for centuries. Stinging nettle has one of the highest free amino acid concentrations of any wild plant. Asparagine and arginine dominate, both nitrogen-rich, plus iron, magnesium, calcium, copper, zinc, and silica pulled up through its deep root system. Estimated NPK around 511. A 2021 study published in the journal Sustainability tested fermented nettle extract on green beans. The result? Nettle extract matched commercial urea for stem height and significantly raised iron levels in the leaves. A free fertilizer matching a synthetic from a weed. The recipe: wear gloves, it stings. Cut about 1 pound of fresh nettles, stems and leaves. Don't pull the roots, leave them to regrow. Stuff the nettles into a 5-gallon bucket 3/4 full, top with rainwater, set it downwind of the house. The smell during fermentation is rough. Stir every couple of days. After 10 to 14 days, when the smell goes from sharp to earthy, strain off the liquid. To apply, dilute 1 part nettle tea to 10 parts water for soil drench, 1 to 20 for foliar spray, once every 2 weeks on vegetative stage plants. Best on leafy greens, brassicas, tomatoes during early growth, anything that needs to push out leaves. What to skip? Don't use on legumes, which fix their own nitrogen. Don't use on root crops. Don't use once tomatoes start setting fruit, or you'll get giant plants with tiny tomatoes. The mistake almost everyone makes: they brew it once, smell it, decide it's not worth it, and never make it again. Yes, it stinks. Put the bucket 50 feet from the house and move on. The stink is proof the bacteria are doing their job. For $0 and the cost of a pair of gloves, the weeds along your fence line can fertilize your entire vegetable garden. Number 9. Aerated compost tea. The honest truth about the most hyped method in gardening. I'm going to give this one to you straight because this method has been hyped on every gardening podcast for 20 years, and the full picture is more complicated than most people tell you. In the 1990s, a microbiologist named Elaine Ingham at Oregon State University started promoting actively aerated compost tea. The pitch was simple: steep good compost in water, bubble air through it for 24 hours, and apply the microbial soup to your plants. It made sense in theory, and for some people on some soils, it works. But here's the problem. A 2014 study by researchers at Bartlett Tree Experts and Morton Arboretum ran a 5-year trial on urban trees. They compared aerated compost tea against wood chip mulch and compost top dressing. Wood chip mulch increased tree biomass by 170% over the control. Compost top dressing, 82%. Compost tea, no significant effect. A 2002 review by Sherrill and Mahaffey found that compost teas vary so wildly batch to batch you can't guarantee the same result twice. The honest take? Solid compost on the soil consistently outperforms tea applications. If you have to pick one, pick the solid stuff. Tea is a bonus, not a foundation. If you do brew, here's how to do it right. 5 gallons of dechlorinated water, 1 to 2 cups of high-quality finished compost in a mesh bag, 1 to 2 tablespoons of unsulfured molasses, 1 teaspoon of liquid kelp, 1 teaspoon of fish hydrolysate. Aerate continuously with a strong aquarium pump for 24 to 48 hours. Use within 4 hours of pulling the pump. After that, the microbes start dying off and the tea goes anaerobic, growing the wrong things. The hard rule? Don't foliar spray manure-based compost tea on edible crops. The USDA's National Organic Program prohibits it. Pour it at the root zone or spray only on ornamentals. And quality compost in means quality tea out. Contaminated compost brews contamination. Now the next cluster is the one that changed my own gardening forever. 4 methods from one farmer in South Korea who quietly trained 18,000 farmers across 30 countries. Number 10. Eggshell calcium acetate. Cho Han Q's brilliant chemistry for blossom end rot. In the 1960s, a farmer named Cho Han Q in Suwon, South Korea, traveled to Japan to study under 3 old farmers who had spent their lives developing a system of completely natural farming inputs. Cho came home, refined what he learned, and turned it into a complete method called Korean natural farming. Over the next 60 years, he trained over 18,000 farmers in more than 30 countries. The University of Hawaii formalized his recipes into agricultural extension publications. Cho passed away in 2025 at the age of 90. His first recipe is the easiest. It's also the one that fixes the single most common problem in any tomato garden in America: blossom end rot. Most people are told blossom end rot is a calcium deficiency. That's only half right. The actual problem is that calcium in the soil isn't moving into the developing fruit fast enough, usually because of irregular watering. But adding more soluble calcium to the system gives the plant a buffer. Cho's solution is brilliant chemistry. You take eggshells, pure calcium carbonate, and dissolve them in vinegar, which is acetic acid. The reaction produces calcium acetate, a calcium compound that is fully water-soluble and immediately plant-available. You've taken calcium locked up in eggshell rock and turned it into liquid the plant can drink. The recipe: roast a handful of eggshells in a dry cast iron skillet for 30 minutes until they turn light brown. Crush them coarsely. In a glass jar, add 1 part shells to 10 parts vinegar by volume. Cover with cloth secured by a rubber band, never a sealed lid. The reaction releases CO2 gas. Pressure will explode glass. Wait 7 to 20 days. When the bubbling stops, strain off the shells. To use: 1 teaspoon of the finished liquid in 1 gallon of water. Spray on leaves or pour at the root zone just before flowering and during fruit set. Honest note: this won't cure blossom end rot already on a fruit. Once a fruit has the black patch, that fruit is finished. But every fruit that develops afterward will be clean. Apply preventively, not reactively. Cost? Free. Every household throws away the shells. And a little vinegar. Number 11. Fermented plant juice. Hormonal rocket fuel from your backyard weeds. Cho Han-kyu observed that the fastest-growing parts of any plant, the new shoots, the growing tips, contain higher concentrations of plant hormones, enzymes, and energy-rich compounds than any other part. If you could capture those compounds, ferment them, and feed them to other plants, you'd be giving them a hormonal head start. That's fermented plant juice, FPJ for short. The recipe: just before sunrise, ideally 2 or 3 days after a rain, walk out to a patch of vigorous plants: mugwort, bamboo shoots, comfrey, stinging nettle, purslane, sweet potato vine. Pick the youngest growing tips. Do not wash them. The wild yeasts and lactic acid bacteria on the leaf surface drive the fermentation. Washing kills them. Cut into 2 to 3 inch pieces. Weigh it. Mix 3 parts plant material to 1 part raw brown sugar, not white sugar, not molasses, the crude kind sold as panela or jaggery. Pack the mixture 2/3 full into a glass jar. Cover with breathable cloth. Never seal it. Wait 5 to 10 days at room temperature. The sugar pulls water and chlorophyll out of the leaves through osmosis. Wild lactobacillus and yeasts ferment the result. You end up with a thick, dark green liquid at the bottom. Strain it off. That's your FPJ. It keeps for months in a cool, dark place. To apply: 1 tablespoon of FPJ in 10 liters of water, roughly a 1,000 to 1 dilution. Spray on leaves or pour at the root zone once a week, always early morning or evening. Honest note: no university lab has run a full controlled trial on FPJ that I can find. The mechanism is plausible. Korean and Hawaiian farmers swear by it. Try it on a few plants alongside a control before committing your whole garden. Number 12. Lactic acid bacteria serum, the most powerful microbial inoculant you've never heard of. You know what's living on the rinds of cabbages, on the surface of grape skins, on every piece of fruit you bring home from the garden? Lactobacillus. the same family of bacteria that makes yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, and sourdough. Cho Han Kyu figured out how to capture them from your kitchen and grow them by the billions in a quart jar. Stage 1. Capture the wild lactobacillus. Take a cup of uncooked rice, rinse it once in dechlorinated water, pour off that first rinse. Rinse a second time harder. The water comes out cloudy, milky white. That second rinse is what you want. Pour it into a quart jar 2/3 full. Cover with a paper, set in a dark cabinet for 3 to 5 days. The smell turns slightly sour. That's the lactobacillus multiplying. Stage 2. Grow them on milk. Skim off the thin film on top. Pour the middle layer into a clean half-gallon jar. Add 10 parts whole milk to 1 part rice starter. Cover with paper. Wait for 3 to 7 days. The mixture separates, white curds on top, clear yellowish liquid at the bottom. That bottom liquid is your finished serum. It contains roughly 100 million to 1 billion live lactobacillus per milliliter. Strain off the curds, feed them to chickens or compost them. Bottle the serum, refrigerate for up to a year, or mix 1:1 with brown sugar for shelf stability. To apply, 3/4 of a teaspoon per gallon of water. Spray on leaves, pour at the root zone, or add to your compost pile. What it does? Lactic acid bacteria suppress fungal pathogens by lowering local pH and producing antibacterial compounds called bacteriocins. They solubilize phosphate locked up in the soil. They eliminate odor in compost and animal pens. Lab studies document their inhibition of pythium, botrytis, and phytoplathra. A gallon of milk and a cup of rice. That's all it takes for a season's worth of treatments. Try working that math against any commercial probiotic on the garden store shelf. Now, let's move to the animals on your homestead, because 3 of the most powerful fertilizers on Earth come straight from your barn. Number 13. Rabbit manure. The only manure on Earth you can use straight from the animal. Most manure has to be aged. Chicken manure is so hot with ammonia, put it on a tomato plant fresh from the coop and you'll burn the roots off in 2 days. Horse manure carries weed seeds. Cow manure needs 6 months of composting minimum. Rabbit manure is different. It's the one and only common manure on Earth you can apply fresh, same day, with no aging, no composting, no waiting. Old-time farmers called it cold manure. The numbers. Rabbit pellets run about 2 to 2.5% nitrogen, 1.5 to 2.5% phosphorus, and roughly 1% potassium. Compare that to cow manure at 0.5% across the board. Rabbit pellets carry roughly 4 times more nitrogen than cow patties. If you raise meat rabbits or pet rabbits, you've already got a gold mine sitting under those cages. To use dry, sprinkle pellets directly around base of plants and water in. They'll release nutrients over 4 to 6 weeks. To make tea, take a couple cups of pellets, drop them in a pillowcase or burlap sack, tie the top, drop the sack into a 5-gallon bucket of water, let it sit 2 to 3 days, stirring once daily. Pull the sack out, dilute the tea to the color of weak coffee, about 1 part tea to 10 parts water. Pour at the root zone. Speed? Visible greening in 3 to 5 days. No burn, no smell. The mistake: people use rabbit manure from rabbits on medication. If your rabbit is on a dewormer or antibiotics, skip the manure for a couple of weeks afterward. Those compounds pass through. Number 14. Fish hydrolysate. The Pilgrim's original liquid fertilizer. Updated. The Pilgrims didn't survive their first winter because of pumpkins. They survived because a Wampanoag man named Tisquantum, most people remember him as Squanto, them to bury a fish under each hill of corn. That wasn't superstition. That was the original liquid fertilizer. When you bury fish in the ground, Soil bacteria break the fish protein down into amino acids, and amino acids are nitrogen the plant can drink. No mineralization required, no 2-week wait. Modern commercial fish hydrolysate is the same idea, made faster. Whole fish, ground up, treated with enzymes that break the proteins down cold. NPK around 411 to 522 plus 16 amino acids, fish oils, and natural chelates. Important distinction. Fish hydrolysate is enzyme processed cold. It keeps everything. The cheaper fish emulsion at most garden stores is steam cooked. The heat denatures the proteins and burns off the oils. You're left with nitrogen, but most of the magic is gone. If you want to make your own, Korean Natural Farming has a recipe called fish amino acid. Take fish scraps, heads, guts, frames, especially oily fish like mackerel or sardines. Layer them 1-to-1 by weight in brown sugar in a plastic bucket. Cover with cloth, never a sealed lid, or the gas will explode the container. The fish liquefy in 2 to 3 days, usable in 7 to 10 days, fully cured in 2 months. The finished liquid smells weirdly sweet like soy sauce. To apply, 1 teaspoon of finished fish liquid per gallon of water. Pour at the root zone or spray on leaves once a week during vegetative growth. Stop once the plant starts setting fruit, or the excess nitrogen will give you giant leaves and small tomatoes. The mistake: people make the fish ferment in a sealed bucket. The pressure builds up. You end up with fish guts on the ceiling of your shed. Cloth cover, always. Number 15. Vermicompost and worm tea, the underground army that fertilizes for you. There's a researcher named Norman Arancon who spent 20 years at Ohio State University, then the University of Hawaii, doing something most agricultural researchers won't touch. He ran field trial after field trial on worm compost, and he published the same finding every time. Vermicompost, the dark, crumbly castings from red wiggler worms, outperformed regular compost on yield, growth, and disease suppression. Tomatoes, peppers, strawberries, lettuce, marigolds, pak choi, even houseplants. The active ingredients aren't just the nutrients, they're humic acids, fulvic acids, and a specific community of plant growth-promoting bacteria that worms cultivate in their guts. Arancon showed in 2003 that humic acids isolated from worm castings produced measurable growth response in plants at just 250 to 500 parts per million. To make liquid worm tea, 1 cup of castings in a mesh bag, an old sock works. Suspend in a 5-gallon bucket of dechlorinated water. Add 1 teaspoon of unsulfured molasses to feed the bacteria. Run an aquarium air pump through a stone at the bottom of the bucket for 24 hours. The aeration is what multiplies the beneficial bacteria. Without it, you just get muddy water. Use within 4 hours of pulling the pump. To apply, dilute 1 to 5 with fresh water. Pour at the root zone or strain through cheesecloth for foliar spray every 2 weeks during the growing season. The honest part: peer-reviewed evidence on vermicompost tea is thinner than solid vermicompost. Top dressing a plant with a 1/4 cup of dry castings gives more consistent results. If you have to pick one, pick the solid stuff. The tea is a bonus for fast root zone delivery. Now, let's move to 3 things already sitting on your property that most people overlook completely. Number 16. Wood ash, the 5-gallon bucket worth $50 in soil amendments. Every wood stove in this country produces, at the end of winter, a 5-gallon bucket of one of the most powerful natural fertilizers on Earth. Most people throw it on the driveway to melt ice. Hardwood ash from a clean wood fire is roughly 25% calcium carbonate, 4 to 10% potassium, and 1 to 2% phosphorus, plus trace boron, copper, manganese, and magnesium. It's calcium and potassium in a form so soluble, it'll change your soil chemistry within a month, for better or for worse. The rules old-time farmers knew. Rule 1. Test your soil pH first. Wood ash raises pH. If your soil is already neutral or alkaline, pH 7 or above, wood ash is a plant can grow. If your soil is acidic, under 6.5, wood ash is a gift. Rule 2. Application rate. About 20 pounds per 1,000 square feet per year. One full 5-gallon bucket spread over a small backyard garden. Rule 3. Plants that love it. Brassicas, asparagus, beets, tomatoes, stone fruits, lawn grass. Rule 4. Plants that hate it. Blueberries, rhododendrons, azaleas, conifers, all acid lovers. Wood ash kills the acidic soil they need. Rule 5. Don't put it on potatoes. A soil microbe called Streptomyces scabies causes potato scab. Wood ash favors that organism. You'll get a beautiful crop of ugly potatoes. The other mistake. People burn glossy magazines, plywood, painted lumber, charcoal briquettes, then put the ash on food crops, heavy metals, formaldehyde. Burn only clean wood fire. Apply it in fall or early spring. Spread thin. Rake it into the top 2 inches. Water in. That bucket of ash is worth $50 of soil amendment, and it was headed for the dumpster. Number 17. Borax, the $5 laundry aisle fix that saves your entire brassica crop. If you've ever cut into a broccoli stem and found a hollow brown core, that wasn't bad seed, that wasn't poor watering, that was boron deficiency. Boron is one of the strangest nutrients in plant biology. The plant only needs it in fractions of a part per million, but it can't move once it's in the leaf. When new growth runs out of boron, the whole growing tip suffers. Hollow stems in broccoli, brown heart in turnips, misshapen strawberries. Most American garden soils, especially east of the Mississippi where rainfall leaches it out, are mildly boron deficient. Most gardeners never test for it. They just lose part of their brassica crop every year and chalk it up to bad luck. The fix is sitting in the laundry aisle. 20 Mule Team Borax, $5, lasts 10 years. The recipe? 1 tablespoon of borax dissolved in 1 gallon of warm water. Stir until clear. Spray that gallon evenly over a 100-square-foot section of brassica bed, 1 time per season. That's it. The critical warning: boron has the narrowest deficiency to toxicity window of any plant nutrient on Earth. Below half a part per million, the plant starves. Above 4 parts per million, the plant dies. You're aiming for a razor-thin window in between. The absolute hard rule: beans, peas, soybeans, lentils, do not put borax anywhere near them. A dose that helps broccoli will kill your green beans dead. Keep the borax bed at least 10 feet from any legumes. This single application, once in early spring, is the difference between farm stand broccoli and hollow stem disappointment. Number 18. Alfalfa pellets, the $20 bag that rose gardeners have known about for 50 years. Walk into any farm supply store, buy a 50-pound bag of alfalfa pellets, the kind people feed to rabbits and horses, about $20. Take it home. You now have, by weight, the cheapest plant growth regulator in agriculture. In 1977, a researcher named Stanley Reese at Michigan State University was studying alfalfa. He pulled out a compound nobody expected, a 30-carbon alcohol called triacontanol. He published the discovery in the journal Science. Then he ran the next experiment. He sprayed dilute triacontanol on rice seedlings. He measured them 40 minutes later. 40 minutes! The rice plants had measurably more weight, more chlorophyll, and more nitrogen content than the control. That's not slow soil chemistry. That's a switch flipping inside the plant. Triacontanol works at parts per billion concentrations. The plant uses it as a signal to ramp up photosynthesis, accelerate nutrient uptake, and boost chlorophyll production. The American Rose Society has been recommending alfalfa tea for decades. Rose growers report doubled bloom counts. The recipe: 1 cup of alfalfa meal or pellets in a 5-gallon bucket of water. Stir once a day for 2 to 3 days. It'll smell like a barn. Pour about a gallon around the base of any rose, peony, daylily, iris, or tomato plant once a month during the growing season. 2 mistakes. Don't spray full-strength alfalfa tea on leaves, it'll burn them. For foliar use, cut to a 1/4 cup of meal in 5 gallons of water. And don't use on flowering perennials in late fall. It pushes tender new growth that frost will kill. $20 buys you 2 years of fertilizer for a 1/4-acre garden, and you can feed the leftovers to the rabbits. Now, the last cluster. These 3 are the most unconventional methods on the entire list. One takes 1,000 years to fully pay off. One comes from a Japanese kitchen waste system, and the last one, well, I warned you at the beginning. Number 19. Biochar, the 1,000-year investment the Amazon taught us. In the 1500s, Spanish conquistadors traveled up the Amazon River. They reported finding patches of soil unlike anything in the surrounding rainforest: black, deep, fertile. The natives called it terra preta, black earth. The Spaniards thought it was natural. It wasn't. 500 years later, soil scientists figured out that pre-Columbian Amazonian peoples had been intentionally building those soils for at least 1,000 years. They mixed pottery shards, fish bones, manure, and crucially, charcoal, the leftovers from low-temperature fire pits. Today, those terra preta patches still grow crops at 3 times the productivity of the surrounding jungle. The active ingredient is biochar, charcoal made by burning wood at low temperatures with very little oxygen. A single gram of biochar has roughly the surface area of a tennis court. That microscopic sponge holds water, holds nutrients, and houses bacteria in its pore spaces. The carbon stays in the soil for thousands of years. Here's the catch almost no article mentions. Fresh biochar is an empty sponge. Put it straight into your soil and it sucks up existing nutrients for the first year, often reducing yields. You need to charge it first. How to charge it? Soak fresh biochar for 48 hours in something biological: compost tea, diluted urine, fish hydrolysate, worm casting tea. Or mix fresh biochar 50-50 with finished compost and keep moist for 2 weeks. To apply, mix charged biochar into the top 6 inches of soil at no more than 5 to 10% of soil volume. Speed? You won't see a big effect the first season. By year 2, the soil holds moisture longer. By year 3, visibly bigger plants on less fertilizer. By year 10, that bed is more productive than the day you built it. Cornell University's Johannes Lehmann, the world's leading biochar researcher, has documented this effect repeatedly. It's real, and it's the only fertilizer on this list that keeps working for 1,000 years. Number 20. Bokashi leachate, the Japanese kitchen waste system with a hidden bonus. In Japan and Korea, bokashi has been the standard way to handle kitchen waste for 50 years. Most people in America have never heard of it. Here's how it works. You take a 5-gallon bucket with a tight lid and a spigot at the bottom. Sprinkle a layer of inoculated bran mixed with effective microorganisms, the EM blend developed by Dr. Teruo Higa in Okinawa in the 1980s. Add a layer of food scraps, even meat and dairy, which a regular compost pile can't handle. More bran, more scraps, pack it down, seal the lid. Inside the sealed bucket, the EM microbes ferment the food anaerobically. 2 weeks later, you've got pickled food scraps you can bury in the garden. But here's the part most people miss. As the food ferments, liquid drips down and collects at the bottom. You drain it through the spigot every few days. That liquid is bokashi leachate. Honest assessment? Bokashi leachate has low nitrogen but high potassium and phosphorus, plus a massive concentration of beneficial microbes. It's too low in nitrogen to be a complete plant food on its own. Treat it as a microbial inoculant, not a fertilizer. To apply, dilute 1 part leachate to 100 parts water. Pour at the root zone every 2 weeks. Use within 8 hours. The microbes die off without their food source. The killer use nobody mentions? Pour the undiluted leachate down your kitchen sink, shower drain, or septic tank. The lactic acid bacteria break down sludge, eliminate odors, and balance the microbiome of a septic system. People who use it swear they pump their tank half as often. And now, the last one, the one I warned you about at the start, the one that comes out of the bathroom. Number 21. Human urine, the most taboo fertilizer in America, with more research than you'd expect. I'm going to lay out the science straight. Then you decide. The human body excretes nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium every day. About 80% of the nitrogen, 50% of the phosphorus, and 60% of the potassium in our waste comes out in urine, not solids. Fresh, healthy urine is sterile when it leaves the body, roughly 95% water, the rest is urea, a small amount of salt and trace minerals. The NKK averages about 11:1:2.5, comparable to commercial liquid lawn fertilizer. In Brattleboro, Vermont, an organization called the Rich Earth Institute has been running the community-scale urine recycling program in the United States since 2012. They collect about 12,000 gallons a year from 200 donors. They've run multi-year field trials with Fair Winds Farms. Hay yields with urine fertilizer matched hay yields with synthetic fertilizer, published in peer-reviewed journals. They also collaborated with the University of Michigan and University at Buffalo on pharmaceutical residue concerns. The conclusion? You'd have to eat a pound of urine-fertilized lettuce every day for 2,000 years to ingest 1 dose of acetaminophen. In Switzerland, a research institute called AWAG developed the world's first government-approved urine-based commercial fertilizer in 2018. They sell it under the brand name Orin. The Romans collected urine in public urinals and taxed its sale. Amish and Mennonite farmers have used chamber lye for centuries. In Asia, every farming culture older than 4,000 years recycles human urine. The recipe: dilute 1 part urine to 10 parts water. For seedlings, 1 part to 20. Pour at the root zone, never on leaves, never on edible parts you'll eat raw within 4 months. Best on hay, sweet corn, leafy greens, brassicas, lawn grass, cut flowers. For raw-eaten crops like lettuce or strawberries, WHO guidelines say store the urine sealed for 6 months first. The urea breaks down to ammonia, which sterilizes any potential pathogens. The mistakes: applying undiluted causes salt burn, using it on potted plants where salts can't leach out, and ignoring it just because the source feels strange. You produce it free every day. It's one of the most concentrated, most studied fertilizers in agricultural history, and most people in this country flush it down the drain. I need to tell you something personal here because I think it matters. 2 years ago, I nearly gave up on my tomato patch. I'm not exaggerating. I was ready to rip the whole thing out and put in gravel. I'd been fighting the same battle every season: late blight, powdery mildew, blossom and rot. Every July, like clockwork, my plants would start strong, big green canopy, flowers everywhere, and then fall apart within 3 weeks. The leaves would curl, the spots would spread, and by August I'd be pulling diseased vines out of the ground and throwing them in the burn pile, trying not to calculate how much money I'd wasted on transplants, soil amendments, and bottles of fungicide that didn't do a thing. I'd tried the copper sprays, I'd tried the neem oil, I bought the expensive mycorrhizal inoculant from the garden catalog. I even paid for a soil test, which told me my pH was fine, my nutrients were adequate, and there was no obvious deficiency, which was real helpful when my tomatoes were dying right in front of me. That winter, I stumbled across a University of Hawaii extension publication about Korean natural farming, specifically the lactic acid bacterium serum, the LABS method I described earlier as item 12 on this list. Capture wild lactobacillus from rice water, grow them on milk, dilute the serum, and spray it on everything. I'll be honest with you, I thought it sounded ridiculous. Rice rinse water in a jar of milk sitting in a dark cabinet for a week? That's not agriculture. That's something you'd find in the back of a neglected refrigerator. But I was desperate, and the materials cost me literally nothing. A cup of rice I was going to cook anyway, a quart of whole milk that was 2 days from the expiration date, a mason jar, and a paper towel. I followed the recipe exactly. 5 days for the rice rinse water stage. The smell went sour, just like the instructions said. Then I added the milk. 7 days later, the curds separated from the clear yellowish serum at the bottom. I strained it off, mixed 3/4 of a teaspoon into a gallon of water, and sprayed my transplants the first week of June, then again 2 weeks later, then every 2 weeks after that through the season. Here's what happened. By mid-July, the exact point where my tomatoes normally started their annual collapse, every single plant was still clean. No powdery mildew, no early blight. The leaves were dark green, thick, and healthy. I kept waiting for the crash. It didn't come. By late August, I'd pulled more tomatoes off those 12 plants than I'd harvested in the previous 2 seasons combined. I canned 47 quarts of sauce that year. 47! The year before, I'd canned 11, and half of those came from tomatoes I bought at the farmer's market because mine had died. I didn't change the soil. I didn't change the varieties. I didn't change the watering schedule. The only variable was a tablespoon of fermented rice milk serum in a gallon of water sprayed on the leaves every 2 weeks. Now, am I telling you that LABS is a magic bullet that'll fix every problem in every garden? No. I'm telling you what happened on my property, with my soil, in my climate. Your results might be different. But here's what that season taught me, and it's the reason I made this video. The solutions that actually work aren't sitting on a shelf at the garden center with a $30 price tag and a glossy label. They're sitting in your kitchen, in your barn, along your fence line, in your animals' cages. They've been there the whole time. You just didn't know to look. That one season with LABS turned me into a believer. Not just in that one method, but in the whole idea that the homestead already has everything the garden needs. We've just been trained to drive past it on the way to the store. Now, before you head out to the kitchen and start fermenting everything in sight, I need to save you from the 5 mistakes that ruin these methods for most people. I've made every single one of these myself, so learn from my pain. Mistake number 1, going too strong on the dilution. This is the big one, the #1 killer, and it applies to almost every method on this list. People hear that something works and their brain immediately says, if a teaspoon per gallon is good, a tablespoon must be 3 times better. It doesn't work that way, not even close. Remember that University of Natal study on seaweed? At 1 part in 100, it slowed root growth on tomatoes. At 1 part in 600, the same product boosted root growth by 60%. Wood vinegar at a normal dilution boosts yields 21%. Go above 3% and it's a herbicide that kills the plant you're trying to save. Aspirin above 500 milligrams per gallon burns the leaves right off the stem. These are biological signals, not brute force chemicals. Plant hormones work at parts per billion concentrations. The same way a single drop of perfume fills a room, but dump the whole bottle and you can't breathe. More is not better. More is often the opposite of better. Follow the ratios, exactly as written. Mistake number 2, sealing fermentation containers. This one can actually be dangerous. 3 of the methods on this list, eggshell calcium acetate, fermented plant juice, and fish amino acid, produce gas during fermentation. Carbon dioxide in the case of eggshells, a mix of gases in the fermented liquids. If you seal those jars or buckets with an airtight lid, pressure builds. Glass jars can explode. Plastic buckets can blow their lids across the shed. And in the case of fish amino acid, if that sealed bucket pops, you will have rotten fish liquid on every surface within a 10-foot radius. I've heard from people who had to burn their clothes afterward. The rule is simple: cloth cover, rubber band, breathable lid. Every single time. If it's fermenting, it's breathing. Let it breathe. Mistake number 3, applying the wrong fertilizer at the wrong growth stage. This one's subtle, and it costs people more production than they realize. Nitrogen-heavy inputs, nettle tea, fish hydrolysate, urine, alfalfa tea, are vegetative stage fertilizers. They tell the plant to grow leaves, big, green, lush leaves. That's exactly what you want in May and June when your tomato plant is building its canopy. But if you keep pouring nitrogen on a tomato plant after it starts flowering and setting fruit in July, you know what you get? A 6-foot-tall tomato tree with gorgeous foliage and almost no tomatoes. The plant never switches from grow mode to fruit mode because you keep telling it to grow. Once your plants start flowering, switch to potassium-heavy inputs. Comfrey tea, wood ash, eggshell calcium. These support fruit development, not leaf growth. Match the fertilizer to the growth stage, or you'll grow the prettiest empty garden on the block. Mistake number 4, spraying foliar treatments in midday sun. I mentioned this in a couple of the individual items, but it's important enough to say again on its own. If you spray seaweed, LABS, FPJ, aspirin, or nettle tea on your plants at noon on a sunny day, 2 things happen. First, the liquid magnifies the sunlight through the droplets and literally scorches the leaf surface. You'll see brown burn spots within hours. Second, the liquid evaporates so fast that the plant doesn't have time to absorb the nutrients through the leaf pores, the stomata, which are often closed during peak heat anyway. Always spray in the early morning or evening. Dawn and dusk are your windows. The stomata are open, the air is cool, the liquid stays on the leaf long enough to be absorbed. This one timing adjustment doubles the effectiveness of every foliar method on this list. Mistake number 5, using these methods without observing the plant first. This is the mistake that separates the gardener who wastes time from the one who gets results. Before you spray anything, pour anything, or ferment anything, look at the plant. Actually look at it. The plant is already telling you exactly what it needs. Yellow leaves at the bottom with green on top? That's nitrogen. Reach for nettle tea, fish hydrolysate, or diluted urine. Yellow new leaves with green veins? That's iron or magnesium. Seaweed extract is your first move. Black sunken patch on the bottom of a tomato? Calcium. Get the eggshell vinegar going. Wilting leaves with wet soil? Root rot. Hydrogen peroxide drench, not fertilizer. White powdery coating on the leaves? Milk spray or whey. Sunny morning, once a week. If you don't diagnose first, you're just guessing, and guessing means wasting time, wasting product, and sometimes making the problem worse. A nitrogen-starved plant and a root-rotting plant can look almost identical from 3 feet away. One needs fish tea, the other needs peroxide. Give the wrong one and you'll kill a plant you could have saved. Read the plant, then reach for the remedy. So let's zoom out for a second, because this isn't really about saving money on fertilizer. That's the bonus. This is about something much bigger. Every single method on this list does something that no synthetic fertilizer on Earth can do. It feeds the plant and builds the soil at the same time. When you pour blue crystal fertilizer on your garden bed, the plant gets a hit of nitrogen, the leaves green up, you feel good, but the soil underneath gets nothing. The microbial community doesn't grow, the fungal networks don't expand, the earthworms don't multiply, the soil structure doesn't improve. And next season, you need the same amount or more because the soil has become dependent on outside inputs to function. You're not building a garden, you're maintaining an addiction. Now picture what happens when you use the methods on this list for 2 or 3 seasons straight. The rabbit manure and worm castings add slow-release nutrients and organic matter that feed soil bacteria for months. The LABs and bokashi lechet inoculate the root zone with beneficial microbes that suppress disease and unlock phosphorus the plant couldn't reach before. The Comfrey tea and nettle tea deliver potassium and nitrogen in forms that soil biology can process and recycle, not just consume and waste. The biochar creates permanent housing for those microbes, holds moisture through drought, and stays in the ground for 1,000 years. The fish hydrolysis feeds amino acids directly to the root zone, and the bacteria that break it down become part of the soil food web permanently. By year 2, you notice you're watering less, the soil holds moisture longer. By year 3, your plants are bigger on fewer inputs. The disease pressure drops because the microbial community is doing the immune work for you. The earthworm population explodes. The soil gets darker, richer, and easier to dig. You stop buying bags of anything. By year 5, your neighbors are asking what you're doing differently. Your garden is producing more food per square foot than theirs on half the effort. And the answer isn't some secret product. The answer is that you stopped feeding the plant and started feeding the soil, and the soil returned the favor 100 times over. This is what self-sufficiency actually looks like. Not a pantry full of purchased inputs, not a shed full of bottles and bags from the garden center. It looks like a closed loop. Your kitchen scraps feed the worm bin, the worm castings feed the garden feeds the family, the eggshells go back into vinegar, the rabbit manure goes back onto the beds, the whey from the cheese goes onto the tomatoes, the nettles along the fence become liquid nitrogen. Stove ash becomes calcium and potassium. Nothing leaves, nothing is wasted, everything cycles. That's not a garden, that's an ecosystem. And once you build it, it doesn't just sustain itself, it gets better every single year. The fertilizer industry spends $24 billion a year convincing people they can't grow food without buying something. Your homestead already has everything it needs. You just have to stop throwing it away and start putting it back where it belongs. All right, that's 21 free fertilizers hiding in plain sight on your homestead. From 2,000-year-old Japanese wood vinegar to a 3-cent aspirin tablet to the stuff you flush down the toilet every morning. Every one of them proven, every one of them free or nearly free, and every one of them building your soil while the synthetic stuff slowly destroys it. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, which one of these 21 methods are you going to try first? And if you've already been using any of them, I want to know your results. Specifically, how many quarts did you can? How fast did the plant green up? What changed? The best knowledge on this channel doesn't come from me. It comes from this community sharing what actually works on their land, in their climate, with their animals. So don't be shy. Tell me your number. If you got value from this video, and I know you did if you made it this far, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. I don't say that to hear myself talk. I say it because the next video is going to change how you think about your property entirely. I'm breaking down the complete closed-loop homestead system, how to connect your animals, your garden, your kitchen, and your compost into one self-feeding cycle, where nothing is bought and nothing is wasted. The people who watched today's video and then watch that one are going to be years ahead of everyone still driving to the garden center every spring with a shopping list and a credit card. You don't need their products. You never did. Your kitchen, your barn, your fence line, your wood stove, your animals, your bathroom, every corner of your homestead is already a free fertilizer factory. The only thing that was missing was the knowledge to use it. Now you have it. Happy gardening. I'll see you in the next one.